A colleague who took long lunches and left early laughed. I'll just fake being busy, and no one will notice. When HR announced surprise performance reviews, he scoffed. I have nothing to worry about. But when they pulled up security footage of him sneaking out every day, his face went white as he realized he was completely exposed. So, let me tell you about Mark. Mark was the kind of guy who looked busy but never actually was busy. You know the type. Walked fast like he had somewhere important to be. Always had a coffee in hand, a serious look on his face, and some vague excuse about working on a deadline. But if you actually needed something from him, he was suddenly in a meeting, or so swamped, or he'd circle back later. The weirdest part? He somehow never got caught. Our office wasn't that big, a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. We were expected to pull our weight. It wasn't one of those massive companies where you could hide in a sea of cubicles and just hope no one noticed you existed. No. Here, if someone wasn't doing their job, it got noticed. And Mark? Mark had been getting away with it for months. At first, nobody really noticed. We all had our own work to do, and Mark was great at pretending. His whole thing was appearing busy. He came in late every morning, around 9:30 a.m., carrying a coffee like he'd just come from a meeting. He'd make sure to chat with the boss about something vague, client updates, campaign projections, whatever sounded good. He'd sit at his desk looking stressed, furrowed brow, sighing, rubbing his temples. Then, within an hour, he'd disappear. And that's where the real magic happened. Most people assumed he was just in meetings. He'd pop out an email or two, just enough to seem present, but he was never actually around. He took long lunches. Sometimes 2-3 hours. He'd come back just long enough to be seen and then, poof, he was gone again. At first, I thought I was imagining it. I mean, maybe he was actually working? Maybe he had some special project that let him work remotely? But then I started paying attention. Mark's work schedule was, at best, a joke. He left every day between 11 a.m. and noon. Sometimes earlier. If he returned before 3 p.m., it was just to check his email and look busy for a few minutes. By 4 p.m., he'd be back, looking completely wiped out, sighing dramatically, rubbing his face like he'd been grinding all day. At exactly 5:01 p.m., he was out the door. No overtime. No staying late. No actual work. Just vibes. The wildest part? Nobody questioned him. People just assumed he was working somewhere. And Mark? He was so confident he'd never get caught. There were little things at first. I'd ask him for a project update, and he'd say something vague like, I'll have that by end of day. Or, it's in progress. Then he'd disappear. His emails were always sent from his phone, never his laptop. He never showed up to in-person meetings unless the boss was there. Then, one day, he messed up. We were at a team lunch, joking about how crazy work had been, when Mark laughed. And then, this idiot actually said, Honestly? I just fake being busy. As long as you look stressed, no one questions you. The table went quiet. For a second, I thought he was joking. But the way he smirked? He wasn't joking at all. I forced a laugh and moved on, but inside? I was pissed. He wasn't just getting away with it, he was proud of it. And in that moment I decided, I was going to take him down. A few weeks later, HR announced something they'd never done before, surprise performance reviews. Mark? He didn't even blink. I have nothing to worry about, he said, grinning. What are they gonna do, check my browser history? He laughed. Like this was all a joke. Like he was untouchable. And that's when I knew, he was about to get the shock of his life. Because what Mark didn't know, I had been collecting evidence. I had been watching him for weeks, making notes. But now I had a real chance. HR wasn't just doing performance reviews, they were watching people. Tracking emails, project completion rates, even security footage. And Mark? Mark had no idea. I didn't even have to do much. I just made sure that whenever Mark stepped out for a meeting, I asked casual questions. Oh, Mark, which client were you meeting with today? Hey, Mark, did you catch client's name? I think I saw their email come in while you were gone. Each time, he made his way through. Vague answers, nothing solid. Always some excuse about a last-minute client emergency. Or a networking opportunity. And then he got careless. One day, he walked past my desk, all in a rush, saying, Ugh, client call, this is gonna take forever. Then I watched him leave the building. Through the front door. Client call? More like personal errands. That same day, I sent a polite, innocent little email to HR. Hey, just wondering, Do we have a log of in-office meeting times? I want to make sure our schedules are aligned. It wasn't even about Mark directly. Just a little nudge. A small push to make them look. At first, nothing happened. Mark kept doing his little routine, taking his working lunches, vanishing for client meetings, sending 2-line emails to seem engaged. Then, one day, he started acting nervous. He was still faking confidence, still cracking jokes, but I could tell something had changed. I noticed him checking his email more often, glancing at the boss's office, not leaving as much. Then came the first slip-up. One afternoon, he rushed back into the office at 3:50 p.m., sweating. Normally, he came back smooth, casual, like nothing was wrong. Not this time. This time, he looked shaken. And when he sat down at his desk, his hands were shaking just a little. Something had spooked him. A few days later, I overheard him on the phone in the break room. His voice was low, but I caught enough. No, that's not possible. I was there that day. That must be a mistake. I didn't know exactly what was happening. But I knew one thing. HR was on to him. That week, the boss called a surprise team meeting. Nothing huge, just a quick check-in on ongoing projects. I watched Mark closely. For the first time, he wasn't relaxed. He was fidgeting, bouncing his knee, flipping through an empty notepad like he had something written down. He didn't. When the boss started asking direct questions about campaign updates, client feedback, Mark started stammering. It was beautiful. But then, it got better. Boss. Mark, you were with client name last Thursday, right? How did that meeting go? Mark. Yeah, it was great. We went over some, strategy points. Boss raises an eyebrow. Really? Because client name just emailed me saying they haven't heard from us in 2 weeks. Silence. The whole room went dead quiet. I could hear Mark swallow. I swear, for a second, he looked like he might actually run. Then he doubled down. Oh. I meant I called them. I didn't meet in person. My bad, I must have, confused the dates. Boss didn't say anything. He just nodded. And that's when I knew. They were setting him up. Mark must have felt it too, because that afternoon, he started really spiraling. He was checking his emails constantly, rubbing his temples like he was about to get a migraine. At one point, he walked out to the break room, stood there for a full minute staring at the coffee machine, then walked right back out without getting anything. He was losing it. And then, he made his worst mistake yet. That Friday, I left the office around 6:30 p.m. Most people were already gone, except for the boss and a couple of people working late. As I stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed. A message from one of my coworkers. Dude. You are not going to believe what Mark just did. I stopped. Texted back. What happened? He emailed HR, trying to clear up some confusion. Confusion? About what? His meeting logs. Wait. What did he say? That he, accidentally, misreported his client meetings because his Google Calendar had a syncing issue. I laughed out loud in the elevator. Because Mark? Mark had just given HR the final reason to investigate him harder. I didn't even need to do anything else. Mark had just doomed himself. Monday morning, the office had a strange energy. People weren't talking as much. There were whispers near the coffee machine. Even our boss looked like he was waiting for something. And Mark? Mark looked like he hadn't slept all weekend. He walked in at 9:45 a.m., later than usual, his tie slightly crooked, his hair uncombed. He wasn't holding his usual coffee. Instead, he just sat at his desk, staring at his screen like it personally offended him. I could feel it. Something was coming. Then, at 10:15 a.m., an email popped into everyone's inbox. Subject: New time tracking and security protocol updates. I opened it, and immediately grinned. HR was implementing new tracking measures, real-time badge swipes, timestamped security logs, and mandatory status updates for client meetings. It was written like a company-wide efficiency initiative. But we all knew what it was. It was a trap. A perfectly legal, airtight trap. Mark? He turned ghost white. Because this wasn't just about future tracking. No. The email casually mentioned that HR had already reviewed past logs and would be reaching out for clarifications where discrepancies were found. Discrepancies. Mark was full of them. At 11 a.m., Mark was called into a meeting with HR. Not a casual chat. A formal sit-down. He walked in with forced confidence. Even managed to flash a grin at some coworkers as he passed by. But when he came out 40 minutes later, he looked wrecked. His face was pale, his shirt slightly untucked in the back like he had been sitting stiffly the entire time. I watched as he went straight to his desk, grabbed his phone, and stepped out to the hallway to make a call. A very urgent call. I didn't know what was said. But when he walked back in, he was shaking. Now, I thought Mark would try to cover his tracks. Maybe fake some emails, create fake meeting notes, do something desperate. But instead, he tried to throw someone else under the bus. And that's when things took an unexpected turn. That afternoon, another email went out. Subject, quick chat, your project status, half the team got called in for casual project updates. Except we all knew what was happening. HR was cross-checking stories. And the weirdest thing? Mark wasn't the only one in trouble. Another guy, Jason, who was actually a hard worker, came back from his meeting fuming. What the hell is going on? He hissed at me. What happened? I asked. They asked me if I ever covered for Mark. I raised my eyebrows. And? Jason ran a hand through his hair, furious. Dude! Mark tried to say I was handling his client meetings while he was out of the office. But you weren't. No. I barely even work on the same accounts as him. This was new. Mark wasn't just lying anymore. He was panicking. And desperate people? They make sloppy mistakes. That night I stayed late. Not because I had work, I just had to see what would happen. At 6:45 p.m., Mark was still at his desk. His laptop open, clicking through files like he was trying to make up for months of missing work in one sitting. The office was nearly empty. Then our boss walked in. Not an email. Not a phone call. An in-person confrontation. Boss stood by Mark's desk, arms crossed. Mark looked up. Boss. Mark. We need to talk. Mark. Yeah, of course. What's up? Boss. Conference room. Now. Mark hesitated. Just for a second. Then he grabbed his laptop and followed. The door closed behind them. I couldn't hear what was being said. But I knew one thing. Mark was done for. Mark and the boss were in that conference room for a long time. The walls were thin enough that I could hear something, low voices, some shuffling. But not enough to make out the words. Then, suddenly, a loud thud. Like someone had slammed their fist on the table. Then came the raised voices. That's not true. Then explain this. I told you, it's a mistake. A mistake? Mark, we have security footage. Silence. Even the few people still in the office stopped working. Heads turned toward the conference room, eyes wide. Then the door burst open. Mark walked out, face red, his mouth pressed into a hard line. His eyes darted around the room, like he was daring someone to look at him. He stormed to his desk and started grabbing his things. That was it. He knew it. We knew it. And then our boss stepped out, looking exhausted. He ran a hand over his face, took a deep breath, then spoke loud enough for the office to hear. Mark is no longer with the company. If you have any projects connected to him, report to me directly. Boom. Mark didn't go quietly. As he shoved his laptop into his bag, he snapped. Oh, so I'm the bad guy? Really? No one responded. He kept going, his voice rising. You all just let this happen. You think I'm the only one who slacks off? Half of you waste time all day, but I'm the one getting screwed? Silence. Then Jason, poor, blindsided Jason, the guy Mark had tried to frame, stood up. And he was furious. Are you serious, Mark? You threw me under the bus. Told HR I was covering for you. What kind of BS is that? Mark scoffed. I just... He couldn't even finish his sentence. You lied, dude. You straight up lied. Mark looked around the room, waiting for someone to defend him. No one did. Even the few people who might have liked him weren't saying a word. Because the thing about getting caught? It's not just about what you did. It's about how you react when you're backed into a corner. And Mark? He was showing his true colors. Security came up, because apparently, Mark refused to return his company laptop. He stood there arguing with them, trying to negotiate. I just need a few days to wrap some stuff up, sir. You need to hand over the device now. A few more words, a few more protests, but in the end? He had no leverage. He handed it over. And then? He left. The second the door closed behind him, the office exhaled. People started murmuring, shaking their heads. Someone let out a low whistle. Then Jason turned to me. Unbelievable. I nodded. Yeah. Then I asked, what exactly happened in there? Jason rubbed his forehead, still looking pissed. Oh, you'll love this. They pulled the security footage, showed him sneaking out every day. But get this, when they asked him to explain, he tried to say he was working remotely and stepping out for important calls. And then they pulled his call logs. Turns out, he wasn't even making calls. Most days he just vanished. He shook his head. Then, when they brought up the timesheets, the ones he personally submitted, he tried to claim a technical issue made his schedule look weird. So, he lied. Again. Jason snorted. Yeah. And when that didn't work? He tried to blame me. I just stared. And that's when the boss lost it. Apparently, the moment Mark tried to push the blame, our boss snapped. Mark, you expect me to believe that Jason was handling your work? Because we already talked to him. And his story doesn't match yours. You seriously thought we wouldn't check? That's when the yelling started. That's when Mark knew. And that's when he folded. The next few weeks were weird. It was like Mark's ghost still haunted the office. Every time someone walked past his empty desk, they'd shake their head. No one missed him. But people talked about him. At first, it was jokes, about his stupid excuses, his dramatic exit. Then, the reality of it started sinking in. How the hell did he get away with it for so long? Honestly? We wanted to believe he was working. And that was the real lesson here. It wasn't just about Mark being lazy. It was about how easy it is to fake being busy when people assume you're telling the truth. Because the truth is, Mark didn't get away with it because he was smart. He got away with it because people didn't want to look too closely. And that's what made his downfall so satisfying. He had every chance to fix it. To take accountability. To do literally anything other than lie, throw people under the bus, and act like the victim. But he didn't. And that's why he lost everything. The last I heard. A few months later, I heard through the grapevine that Mark had tried applying to another firm. And guess who they called for a reference? Our boss. Apparently, the conversation was short. Boss. Mark? Oh, yeah? He was great at sneaking out of the office and getting fired for it. Needless to say, Mark didn't get the job. And last I heard? He had to move back to his hometown. Chicago's job market isn't too friendly to frauds. And me? I went back to work. And every now and then, when I saw someone pretending to be busy, I just smiled. Because sooner or later, they always get caught.